Thanks, everybody. Looking forward to being here. Excited to talk about more marketing innovation. We're here gathered today to talk about connecting with consumers through brand authenticity and digital innovation. I thought it would be important, though, to give quick introductions for everybody, to help contextualize the conversation. So why don't we start with you, Kellie?
Hi, yes, I'm Kellie Barnett, head of media, working with Janet Lee over at Samsung.
Just a few of you here
yeah,
today.
just a few of us here, and obviously Janet has told you what our objectives are today. So that so you know the secrets here. But I'm excited to be here. I lead integrated marketing and integrated media planning, and it's ready to talk about it.
Well, great. Hi, everyone. Stu Beck. I lead marketing at Soylent, plant-based meal replacement protein shake company. Like many in the room, ex-PepsiCo. So I had the honor of working with James in a former career life.
Show of hands on how many people worked with James in a former life. That's what I thought.
Making the rounds. Is this working? Yeah. Hey everyone, James Clarke. So I have the privilege of leading our in-house agency team, which is called D3, and I lead our digital marketing and organic social media efforts for PepsiCo Foods North America. And that's inclusive of Frito-Lay, which is based here in lovely Dallas, just down the street. And then also our Quaker Foods business, which is based up in Chicago. Looking forward to this.
Thanks, James. And if anyone was wondering, James and I are not related. We do have the privilege of sharing a last name, but unfortunately.
And sometimes a headshot, apparently.
Yeah. And similar style. We got a nice.
Say the same spelling as well.
Oh, I was going to bump this. Oh, there we go. So, good. I'm glad that we can get people.
We're off to a good start here.
All right. So I'm JC Clarke. I'm with Ogury, Vice President of Sales. The company's been around for about 8 years. We are a company that's rooted in understanding the mobile consumer journey. And, we had forever thought of ourselves and looked to be the most privacy-focused company. Fast forward to GDPR, CCPA, we decided to part ways with cookies and identity altogether. And that was a really big pivot for the business. Spoiler alert, we're not a contextual only company, and we do a lot more than just looking at the context, but we look at the behaviors, the attitudes, the sentiments of those consumers. All right. With that said, I want to start off with James here in talking about connecting with consumers through brand authenticity. Thanks for helping me write these questions, by the way. Given your team has oversight of organic, social, and media marketing for some iconic brands like Doritos, Lay's, Captain Crunch, what tips can you share with this audience today regarding how to foster those authentic connections with consumers in this space?
Cool. Great question.
Well, you wrote it.
He's not joking. That's the even funnier part. But I would say, I've certainly learned so much from my team over the course of the past, just over a year and a half that I've been, working the organic social remit for PepsiCo Foods. And prior to that, I joined from leading paid media for Frito-Lay. So I think one of my biggest aha moments through that transition has really just been, understanding the market difference, right, between organic social content and paid social content, right? One, organic social is activating on a pull strategy with consumers. Paid social, on the other hand, is more of that traditional advertiser push, right? And some of the nuggets there and how that manifests, right? When I look at the great work that my team has been delivering, it's embracing the lo-fi world, right? So low fidelity content. We're looking at vertical video in platforms like TikTok, on Reels, YouTube Shorts, right? This is not high polished content. This is not, heavily contrived content. It's very lo-fi, right? We're leaning forward and engaging in meme marketing, as another example, right? We're developing content that mimics the style of native content bespoke to each individual platform, right? And through that effort, that's where we're able to deliver the KPIs for organic social, which differ significantly typically from the paid side, right? We're looking at driving consumer engagement. We're looking to try to embed our brands in culture. We're trying to drive that followership for the brands and that advocacy versus paid social. You're looking at being a bit more surgical with those investments, right? You're building creative designed to drive short-term sales lift response, right? You're measuring that in MMM potentially if you're a large enterprise like we are, or you're building ad content for paid social that's designed to build awareness or shift a consumer perception as you're measured in brand lift. So the objectives are very different, but I would say understand that, right? Lean into that and don't try to apply that one size fits all approach because you're going to come out the other side with very suboptimal results across the board if you try to force fit it.
Following up on that, we were talking the other day, and you mentioned that internally you guys created an agency called Flavor, and how that's led to some really successful initiatives on TikTok, specifically where I think you have over 1 million followers right now. Can you tell the audience more about that journey and what you're ultimately continuing to get out of that?
Yeah, perfect. I'd be happy to. So Flavor, really cool experiment, super fun initiative that my team led on behalf of the organization. And it really was an initiative, purely rooted in the consumer, which made it super fun to work on, but arguably so powerful, right? So within a 6-month period, Flavor, this is, again, a consumer-facing initiative led by our in-house agency team. But we managed to, drive an at-scale following on TikTok, over 1 million consumers strong.
It's extremely impressive, by the way.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Over 1 million consumers, right? And that's making it the largest TikTok account with the most following out of any brand in PepsiCo, not just in the US, but also globally, right? And how did we do that? It harkens back to kind of the first question, right? In terms of, starting from the consumer, identifying an opportunity and in the landscape, right? So what we saw in terms of the rise of food talk, the emergence of what they call chaos cooking. If you guys have ever heard of that, maybe you haven't heard of it, but you've definitely probably seen evidence of it, right? In your socials, in your feeds, right? It's this notion of mashups, right? And with more and more consumers, think of your own behaviors, right? We're cooking more and more at home, right? A lot of that was spurred on by the pandemic, but those behaviors are sticky and they persist. And so when we took a look at the environment, we saw those shifts happening with the consumer. We felt very strongly that, hey, there's a great opportunity here, right? We know that naturally our products, especially on the Frito side, think about Cheetos, Doritos, even brands like Lay's, consumers were naturally gravitating towards them and using them in recipes in this like food talk world as a means of breaking the monotony, right, of those of the drudgery of cooking, right? So they're already using our brands as enhancers. We just identified that opportunity. We leaned in on it and we didn't over manage it, right? I think that was a big part of the secret of the success. As a marketing team, don't be afraid to, acknowledge where do you want to lean in and be heavy-handed on the marketing? Where do you want to set a really, well-crafted, tight narrative for something, especially in your push-based advertising, but on pull, where do you want to put consumer in control, right? And Flavor was one of those, moments for us where we took a back seat as the marketers. We set up the framework of Flavor, right? But we leaned into culinary trends, and then we handed the keys over to the creators on these platforms that consumers were already loving, and they were following, in spades. And that's where I credit a lot of the success of the program to thus far.
Yeah, and I think it's a testament to how you guys were able to use a platform organically to ultimately drive that success with those creators to lean in. Kellie, I turn to you. Your objectives are a little bit different, but partnering with these platforms is equally important. Talk to us a little bit about how you're partnering with some of these platforms to drive those authentic brand experiences.
Absolutely. I think one of the most important things to remember as a marketer is there are many ways to reach your target audience, right? The landscape is fragmented. So we really look at identifying our partners as we'll invest with you, that you need to invest with us as well. And what does that mean? It means, how are you helping us be better at what we do? It's not just placing media on your platform, if it's a social platform, or with you if you're a traditional network even. It's, we will invest in you, but we expect so much more in return. We expect us to build partnerships together, to have more effective creative, for us to understand what works best on your platforms, right? With your audience. So again, it really is identifying these partners that come to the relationship with a goal in sight of, we're going to have you succeed, because with you succeeding, we succeed. And there's many ways to go about that. And we are not afraid to say, thank you, we don't need to partner with you. We don't need to invest with you if you will not invest with us in a way that's meaningful.
I love that. I think that's the epitome of a good partnership right there. And then, you know, as you look to lean into some of these platforms, whether or not they're leaning into you, how do you maintain that consistency with your brand objectives?
You keep them front and center, right? You know, you heard my boss speak up here about how important objectives are and what that means from a strategic perspective as well. I think it's always important for us to ground ourselves in, what is our strategy? What are we trying to achieve? And not the tactic that we're using to get there. And many times, if you get too fixated on a partner or a platform or a tactic, then you can lose sight of what you're trying to do and what you're trying to accomplish. So I think it's always important to ground yourself, make sure your agency is grounded in what you're trying to accomplish, and make sure that you have that front and center and you continue to push towards that.
Yeah, I think it's really good insight. And I think as we talk about platforms as vehicles to push messages out, engage consumers, how do you understand where those consumers are spending their time, right? And those targeted consumers that are part of your growth strategy. So Stuart, you know, you're a bit more of a high growth, mid-stage company right now. A lot of great success, I think, of late. But how do you really understand what that future looks like? And what kind of signals are you using to understand where your consumers are spending their time, so you make your decisions on where to invest in those platforms most effectively?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think as marketers, we all know it all starts with consumer, right? And, you know, I want to go back to something that I think Guillermo said earlier this morning, which is, which arenas are you in and how do you pick which arenas to be in? And I think that's a great analogy or way to think about it. We all have a lot of data that says, okay, they're on these 5 or 6 XYZ platforms, but I think the key is getting in that arena, right? So I think number one is, so we have a very, you know, tech forward gamer audience who really is engaged in what's in the product, you know, what goes into it, and they're huge in Reddit, okay? So for us, it's like, that's interesting. And we didn't want to just like put ads on Reddit. No offense to the Reddit ad team, but I don't think it's the best, most engaging like ad format for those that are on subreddits, everything else. And so for us, we wanted to really get into that arena. And so it's about being a part of that community, driving engagement, being on our subreddit, keeping a really close pulse on it. And I think it's very important as marketers, right? If you're going to be advertising, you've got consumers that are all over Snapchat or TikTok, you don't need to be an influencer on Snapchat or TikTok, but you should be in that arena. You should be experiencing it. We're all consumers, we're all humans, and we see what ads we like, what ads we don't. So I would say, you know, first and foremost, understand the arenas, understand the platforms, but get in those as a consumer yourself to understand them. And then two, and this is a little bit easier as a small brand compared to say Samsung or PepsiCo, but get in that arena and iterate. They're all very smart marketers. You know, we wouldn't be in this room if we weren't, but we won't have all the answers, right? And so the other dimension to this is understand the audience, where they are, get in that arena to experience it yourself. But then third, iterate, learn, right? Instead of spending 3 months to come up with this brilliant strategy, maybe spend, you know, 3 days or 3 weeks doing that, and spend the other 2 months iterating, testing, seeing what works, because you'll surprise yourself. There will be certain activations, certain influencers, certain messaging, certain things where you go, okay, that's really working. That's interesting. Didn't expect that. how do we iterate off that? And it's easier as a small brand, right? So for all the kind of scrappier small brands in the room, you're probably used to that. But even for larger brands, I think just take that mentality, get in the arena. The quicker you get into the arena, because a lot of times as marketers will analyze, well, how big is the arena? Well, what about this arena versus that arena? How that arena going to keep growing? And like we can just, strategize and talk ourselves out of it. Pick those arenas, get into them yourself, and then start iterating, and then you'll get to better results. Because even we talked about this with the flavor initiative, which I love. And it's so consumer led, right? It doesn't come from a brand standpoint, but what are they doing on that platform? So then how do we insert ourselves authentically into that and then iterate? And I think that's where you see really good campaigns always start with the consumer and then very iterative. So,
Stuart, I want to jump in here for a minute as well, just from a large brand perspective. But I think it's so important to test and learn. Exactly. Don't be afraid to try new things, to try new avenues to reach that audience, as long as you have very defined objectives and KPIs to understand what you're trying to achieve. And I think testing and learning is imperative.
So with that said, and we're going to a part of the discussion we're going to do a little bit later on, but I think this is perfect timing. One, how do you create a framework for testing and learning so that you are mitigating the risk and then creating contingency plans so that you can either exploit the wrong word maybe, but really maximize the opportunity or pivot quickly and move on to what's really going to help work?
I mean, I'll say a couple things really quickly. I would say deliberate, focused energy, right? Thinking these things through as upstream as you possibly can. And then it sounds so cliche, but it's like these basic things are fundamental, right? This notion of 70, 20, 10, right.
I'm about to say something very similar. Yeah.
And that's a very familiar notion to us at PepsiCo in media planning. We try to, or I try to, as much as possible, to evangelize that in all aspects, right? On every desk in the team, right? 70, 20, 10, focus your energies and resources accordingly, but do not end up in a place where you are not putting anything into that 10%. If you're not experimenting, if you're not pushing boundaries, right, and you're not being deliberate on setting yourself up for the year, but then also obviously this day and age, right, remaining agile and being aware of how things are unfolding across the year. But if you're not putting in the work, well, it's going to be haphazard, and you're never going to get out ahead, especially if you're managing large teams, right? They need to have clarity into what the priorities are and how we're racking and stacking initiatives.
explain that for the audience. Explain the 70, 20, 10 a little bit. It's still something I keep with today, even as a small brand, but break that down a little bit for everyone.
I mean, it's probably open to, I'd love to hear your definition. But for us, the way we thought of it was 70% kind of tried, tested, and true, right? And if you think on media, that's the lion's share of investment. That's the stuff that we know will pay the bills and keep the lights on. The 20%, and these are not hard percentages, right? We just use it as a framework. It doesn't mean you stick to exactly. If you're at 71%, you're gonna get hauled your butt into the CEO's office, and he's gonna no. The 20% is, hey, you've seen some evidence of good delivery against whatever the KPI is, but maybe it's not at a place where either there's that scalability, right, or that full confidence, right, to lean in a big way. And then 10% is like literally you're doing one of these, right? Hopefully it's trend informed and it's it's something that strategically makes sense. It's not completely haphazard, but like there is no high, strong expectation of an immediate payback or a win.
I would say at Samsung, we take it a step further. Our percentages are 50, 30, 20. So there, yes, but you hit the nail on the head. I would equate it to the 50% of the tried and true is what makes you feel very confident that the way you're moving is the right way, right? It's your insurance plan, right? You can test new things and have confidence that you can pivot very quickly if they're not working. The 30% exactly, we are going to take what we have tried in the past. We have learnings because we always have learnings, and we're going to make it better. and we're going to go to market in a different way. And then the 20% is, yes, we are going to try new things. And I'll tell you why it's important to do so. It's important to do it because otherwise, if you're, I look at it as treading water. If you're not pushing yourself to try new things from a media perspective, you're treading water and you're never going to get to the shore. And in fact, you may actually get pushed further away from the shore because you're not trying new things. The media landscape is changing so much. The way people are interacting with media is changing so much. If you aren't testing and learning and trying new things, you are going to lose. But I'm sorry, I'm Stuart. I can't wait to hear what you have to say. But what I also want to say is what's most important with trying new things is having a measurement plan that you feel confident in and that you can trust, because the measurement plan is going to tell you very quickly if you're moving in the right direction or if you're not. So try new things, but make sure you have, number one, the insurance of things that work as well within your media plan that you know work, but also make sure you have the right measurement plan.
Yeah, that's exactly where I was going to go. This is like a great segue, because whatever framework works for your team, just start with one, whether it's 70, 20, 10, 50, 40, 10, 50, 30, 20. I think all those add up to 100, but not sure. The key to any framework is that you can have KPIs and measures of success that are different, because those buckets, exactly what you're saying, should be measured differently, right? The 50 to 60 to 70, those metrics need to be very revenue focused to be driving the business. The 20 might be more engagement focused. So is it driving clicks? Is it really driving engagement? And the 10 might be, is it really buzzy? Are we generating organic or earned off of it? So the importance of the framework is to be testing and learning, is to be iterating, but it's also so that you're not burdening any ad or any marketing strategy. It needs to drive revenue, drive engagement, drive conversion, drive owned, drive everything else. It's like any specific execution will almost be like the weight of that will almost make it impossible. So what frameworks should do is give you some freedom to go, okay, for this part of the framework, this is the objective. And then at the end of the day, it should all add up to the overall arching business growth you're looking to drive. That's one thing coming from a smaller brand, is that you definitely have to have your marketing metrics and all that. But at the end of the day, what does the business really need to be doing? And is the marketing and service out? Is it traffic into your store if you're a physical location? Is it conversion on your website if you're a D2C brand? Is it awareness and in-store velocity if you're a retail? At the end of the day, there's still like a true north of what it all needs to be laddering up to. But if you can segment it so that you've got clear KPIs and you're aligning on that success going in, because that's also key, right? How many debates have we had after campaigns launched? And it's like, gosh, if we could align on what success, and we still debated, even when we align on the success beforehand, we still debated after, but have that framework, figure out those measures of success going in, and you'll be better served in the long run.
Brilliant. That was, I thought, the best part of the conversation thus far. That's marketing discipline, right? Like making sure that you're going in with good, solid framework, understanding a measurement, solution that's trusted. I think that's really important. As you think about discipline and you look at, Kellie, I'll turn to you here. Innovation's extremely important. You've got to continue to find your audience. Younger audiences are finding new ways to engage with content, new ways to engage with each other. But privacy is still fundamentally extremely important for brands, and the risk of brands, potentially tarnishing the reputation. So, Kellie, as you look at and think about Samsung in consumer privacy as it relates to the partner selection or the innovation that you're striving for, how are you preserving that relationship with the customer while removing risk from the equation?
Absolutely. And I actually think that is such an important question right now. I think privacy is top of mind for all of us, both as consumers and as companies. Certainly Samsung is top of mind. When we look at our partners, it's really important to understand that there are things that we, again, expect from our partners. All of our partners, they sign NDAs and to work with us. If you don't sign an NDA, then we're okay walking away from you. Again, because we're investing with you. We're investing our first party data through LiveRamp, which I believe Dana actually spoke to LiveRamp earlier, which is obviously an industry tried and true third party that scrubs all of the first party data for any identifiable characteristics, as we are able then to target and develop like audiences and use it as we need to. So I would like to say that, looking at how we expect our partners to work with us, signing NDAs, leveraging companies like LiveLamp to make sure that we have our consumers' privacy top of mind is one of the ways that we absolutely go to market.
Awesome. I'm going to switch gears again, and we heard a fun, awesome story from Pizza Hut earlier about the world's largest pizza. Still don't quite understand how it was cooked, but we can get back to that later. But I would love to hear. I mean, that was obviously a very successful story. But I'd love to hear, or not love to hear, but just I think it would be interesting to hear situations that maybe didn't go as planned, and what you guys did, or what you learned from that.
I'll start first with this mistake. I'll jump right in there. So I think for me, yeah, I think one mistake we can make as marketers is that, and I'll use a specific example, is take playbooks and things that have worked in the past and just plug and play it and think you've got that figured out. Like there are marketing strategies and frameworks that work, but there's never like a tried and true playbook that always works. And so one example, and I'll get into a specific execution, was for us as a brand on YouTube. Not surprising, very engaged consumer audience on YouTube. So we started that journey with traditional YouTube advertising. 6-second bumpers, 15-second pre-roll, mid-roll, had seen it work in the past, and it flopped. It didn't do well at all. And part of that was because our metric was about conversion, and that's more of an awareness driver. So you're probably like, no shit, like could have told you that one, but I had seen it work in a prior life. And so, but what we didn't do was walk away and said, YouTube doesn't work, right? Our execution, the way we went about it to reach our objectives, wasn't working. So we said, okay, let's test and learn with streamers, right? Now, as marketers, that like CPM is like 7x what the traditional one is. So it's like you get a little like, well, is this really going to work? Well, I don't know. Let's try it. Let's get in that arena. And so we tested and learned. We looked at streamers across different verticals. We went in very like mindfully about which verticals and how do we test it. And now we're seeing success from it. So it's a good example of taking something that worked for one brand or one category, applying it. That didn't work. Okay, let's not run away. Let's keep testing and learning. Let's have, we talked about testing and learning, have KPIs for it, and then we've seen some success. So the big learning for me personally was don't just take things that worked at a prior category or prior brand and just think you got to figure it out. Experiment, try, but make sure you're keeping your objectives at the forefront and then continue to iterate.
Love it. I'm going to try to 180 for my example just to give variety. And I'm going to talk, at a much higher level in terms of not being in a granular example. But I think this one was equally powerful, at least for marketing performance for our organization writ large. I'd say in the past, historically, especially at Frito-Lay, the focus was, unsustainably too heavy on exclusively paid media. Everything push advertising, right? The bigger, the better, the louder, the stack 'em high, watch 'em fly type mentality, right? But fortunately, I think we've had, a succession of, really brilliant marketing minds, CMOs who have come in and shook up that model, right? And at Frito-Lay, I think it's an interesting case study in the industry because the business has historically performed so strongly, right? It's a really strong performing business. It's the top performing sector within PepsiCo. And I say that to explain why potentially it took so long, right, for that dam to break for us to, recognize that we need to take a holistic approach to our marketing, right? We call it total connections planning now. But what it really is something marketers have been doing for years, right? And the savviest marketers, a lot of them spurred on by having feet to the fire out of necessity, right, to drive their businesses. They caught on early on that, hey, paid is critically important, but that's but one aspect of this larger whole, right? And so I think, that's one thing that we recognize as an organization of, hey, we're dropping the ball here. We're leaving opportunity on the table. And we've done a great job over the past, I'd say, 5 to 6 years of strongly course correcting that and And that's where we've seen the emergence of new teams, right? My team, for example, it didn't exist several years ago within PepsiCo. We didn't have digital marketing. We didn't have social media, right? We didn't have any focused energy in those areas, right? We had zero first-party data. We didn't have a single consumer record. We barely had brand websites up until several years ago. Believe it or not, it was shocking to me. But fortunately, again, we've managed to 180 that, and we've really now seen the light in terms of the ability to unlock synergies of firing on all cylinders, right? Paid, owned, and earned. And ensuring that there's strong collaboration across groups within the organization to bring our comms to life for consumers in a multitude of ways and in a multitude of touch points.
I want to ask so many questions there related to MMM and is it broken, but we're gonna save that for another time. I think we're out of time. I'm sorry. We have time for a question or two. One. Better be good. I'm just afraid now.
I will jump in, and I have my head of social media right there that she has educated me well in this area because it is an important question, right? It's in the news. It's something that's top of mind for everyone. I'll tell you, we are leaning into Twitter, and what we're finding is the consumers are more engaged, that they are, again, investing in us as we're investing in them. And again, that is what's most important when you find partners that you see where you need to go, what your overall objective is, and they help you get there. And that's one of the things that we continue to see with Twitter.
Linda Yaccarino thanks you, by the way.